And we are back, and just before, am I going to the minister or am I going to you, Pat? What am I doing? Go to the minister? Okay, we're doing that. We're going to go to line number 7, and we are going to say a very good morning here to the Minister of Finance, President of the Treasury Board, also the Honourable Member for Humber East. Tom Marshall, good morning.
Good morning, Randy. I wanted to call in. You made an error in your preamble. And
apparently I might have, yes.
You indicated that government had said it was not going to talk until the election about the drug, the drug pricing issue.
Yeah.
Until the election was over. No, that's not correct. Because I'm the guy.
And I don't know. Did I say till the election was over?
That's what I heard you say.
I don't think I said that.
Or until the election. You see.
I didn't even know if I said that.
I listened to it, and that's what prompted me.
All right, and maybe I did. I certainly said you weren't going to talk about it.
I'm the guy from government that went on and said.
Yeah, you weren't going to talk about it.
And we're not going to talk publicly because we're in negotiations now. We're in negotiations with panel. Mr. Kennedy and I met with the panel negotiating committee, and now since then officials of the Department of Health and the Public Service Secretariat are meeting with the panel negotiating team, and we said that we wouldn't debate in public as we do, when we're negotiating.
But that's not. Yeah, that's not the impression you left.
Randy, I called into your show to announce this for government, and I couldn't get on. You were very busy that morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I called into Patty in the afternoon, Patty Daly, and I said it right then and there. I'm the guy that said it. Nobody else said
no question.
Yeah, and I said we're not going to debate the issue in public while negotiations are on. If negotiations come to an end, then we'll be very happy.
All right. The impression that you left had nothing to do with the negotiations. I appreciate you don't do negotiations in public. Everybody does. That's pretty standard operating fare.
Exactly.
But that's not what was coming down here, Mr. Marshall. Come on. You guys aren't going to talk to CISPO. You're not going to talk to this group that you've identified as a splitter group. And you said so. Basically, the impression you left is that we're not going to make any public comment about them.
Randy, we're negotiating with a committee of panel that and the members of the committee. One is the owner of an independent pharmacy. The second one there is the owner of an independent pharmacy. The third one is not the owner of an independent pharmacy, but used to be. And there's a chair. They have a chair available.
Doesn't matter.
CISPO, and CISPO won't show up.
I don't.
Negotiate a generic drug.
I won't disagree with you on that. But I'm telling you
all they want to do is talk to you.
I'm telling you the impression.
They want
fair enough.
To negotiate.
The impression you left, Minister, whether you intended to or not, we often do things we don't intend to do, and words have a way of being twisted. The impression you left was not that we're not talking publicly about this any longer because it's the negotiation with panel that we're dealing with. You people aren't prepared to talk about and address the issue of CISPO any longer. You're not meeting with them. You're not going to talk to them. You're not going to deal with them. That's the impression you left.
Randy, we're negotiating now. There's a chair at the table for CISPO. CISPO refused to show up. Randy, Premier Dunderdale wants lower electricity costs for the people of this province. She wants lower drug costs for the people of this province. People have no choice. If the doctor says they got to have drugs, they got to have them, Randy. And the cost of generic drugs in this country are higher than they are in the U.S. and higher than they are in other OECD countries. And there's got to be a reason for that. And we've looked into it, and other provinces have looked into it, and British Columbia and Alberta and Saskatchewan and Ontario and Quebec and Nova Scotia have all taken an approach to reduce the cost of generic drugs to their citizens, to their taxpayers.
Sure.
And we want to do the same. We understand that in terms of the true cost of the drugs that are being passed on by the pharmacy to the customer, it has markups on it running from 140% to 619%. They're very high markups. Now, that's before you take their costs into consideration, or their expenses of operation into consideration. So what happened, this all started, Randy, when the pharmacies announced they weren't going to honor the card anymore. They're going to make people prepay for their drugs and have to seek reimbursement from the government, which was totally unacceptable because people didn't have the money.
Why did they do that?
I don't know. It certainly shows a lack of
regard. Would it have
regard for?
Well, could it be that
because of action that Minister Kennedy said?
But could it be that they were telling the truth when they said, hey, we've had this issue on the books for over 2 years. We've been trying to get a meeting with the Minister of Health on this issue for over 2 years, and they just won't talk to us, and that's why we took the action we took. Is it possible that that's what motivated them to do what they did?
Randy, the impending generic drug policy was not going to come in until we talked to the pharmacists, until we talked to panel, until we talked to the people that we'd signed the last agreement with, in which we said we recognize them as the negotiating people. CISPO have come out, they must have appeared before me at pre-budget consultations at least 4 or 5 times. Okay, they had a meeting set up with Minister Kennedy. Minister Kennedy was in the House. They walked out. They left about 5 minutes before Mr. Kennedy came in. So don't give me that. There's a seat at the table for them. They just won't show up. They want to go to court. I think that's wonderful. Go to court and let it come out what the profit margins are. Okay, let it come out what the rebates are. Let it come out why the true cost of the drugs are not being passed on, and while the true cost of the drug to the pharmacy is not being passed on. We want to sit down with the pharmacists, and we have sat down with the pharmacists, and what we're trying to do is come up with an agreement. We recognize that a generic drug policy can have negative consequences to the smaller pharmacists and the smaller pharmacies. So we want to sit down and we want to negotiate an agreement that is going to recognize that any future policy change, it has to lower costs to the people of the province.
Right.
People have to have lower drug costs.
Yep.
But we also recognize we have to reconsider how some part of that savings can go into the pharmacy system to avoid negative implications, on the viability of pharmacies, especially pharmacies in rural Newfoundland, or the level and the type of services that they're offered. But you got to sit down and talk about it, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, you're not going to get an argument. You know that from me as an observer to all of this, you're not going to get an argument from me on that. I think they should have gone to the table as well. You're desperate to get a meeting. You want to be involved here, then get in the room and be involed. I'm with you on that 100%.
You want a meeting with the minister? The minister's not there when you get there, so you walk away. And
don't you think, though? But there's been 2 years. Come on, there's more than one instance to get a meeting. Don't you think, though, that in this instance, the province of Newfoundland, the government of Newfoundland, recognizing that in actual fact this policy change, albeit a good one, is going to put under threat some small rural pharmacies, and that we need a mechanism in the policy to avoid that? Really, the people to sit down with are those small pharmacy owners versus panel?
Randy,
because their argument that this is about pharmacists, not pharmacies, matters.
2 of the people at the table are owners of independent pharmacies, and there's a seat for another one. That means there's 4 people representing the pharmacists at the table. 3 of them could be independent pharmacists. What don't you see in that?
Well,
they're there.
I can't disagree with that.
There. 2 of them are already there.
All right. So let's clarify just very quickly, because we've got to go, and I can appreciate, Mr. Minister,
sure,
where you're coming from. Your argument here, originally, when you made the comment, you did it on Patty's show, and I appreciate that. You were trying to get through and couldn't, and that's fine. Doesn't matter what show you did it on, but you did it.
Yeah.
You made the public statement, look, we're not going to be negotiating in public. I said at it, and I have said since, and if I've misinterpreted you, I'll apologize for that, and misquoted you, I'll apologize for it. I do believe in my heart the impression that you left that day, whether you intended to or not, had nothing to do with your negotiation with panel.
But I said we're negotiating.
I know. The impression that you left is that you're not dealing with these, I'll call it radicalized pharmacists out there. You're not talking about them, you're not talking to them. We're not involved, but that was the impression that got left, fair
Randy,
or not.
We can get the transcript and see what we said. But,
I know what you said, and
there's a seat. The panel group said there's a seat at the table for Cisco or CISPO, and of course of the 3 people there, 2 of them were independent pharmacists, and one of them used to be an independent pharmacist.
Sure.
So the issues of concerned independent pharmacists certainly would be raised at the table,
mm-hmm.
and that's where you got to talk about these things. Our policy change. We didn't bring in a policy change. We said we're not bringing it in until we talk to the pharmacists. We recognize that there's going to be some negative consequences for certain pharmacies. Sit down and discuss it. But if you don't show up, then nothing can.
Well, you can't come to any settlement at all. If you're not going to show up to the dance, then you're not going to be able to come to it.
Going on your show and going on the Openline shows and threatening it or going to court and everything. Well, it's going to be interesting what comes out in court. It's going to be very interesting to the people of this province when they find out what they're really paying for their drug costs.
Tom Marshall, the Minister of Finance, President of Treasury Board, the member for Humber East. Good to speak with you this morning.
Nice speaking with you, Randy.
Always. And hey, love a debate, but I tell you, that was the impression you left. It was not intended, I know, but that was the impression you left. Fair enough?
Let's get the transcript and we'll see.
Absolutely.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. I know you don't think that was the impression you left, but it was. And I've done the same thing myself. I've said things, and I've left an impression I didn't intend to, or I thought I was clear and I wasn't. That's what happens with extemporaneous speech.